at that. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Green Witch Homestead. It is still winter. It's not as cold out this week as it was last week. However, we still have a lot of stuff that we're doing with the pig. So we're going to continue on, and I'm going to show you guys how to render lard for all kinds of different uses. Let's get started, and I'll show you how I turn this into this. I was going back through editing and realized I forgot to mention, you don't need to have butchered your own animals to do this. You can go to your local grocery store, to your meat department, and ask them, hey, can I buy some cow fat or pig fat? Or the process is going to be the same for all of them. So go to your local grocery store, pick up some fat, and let's learn how to make lard with it. You want to make sure that you get small chunks to go through the grinder. We're just cutting it into strips here that'll fit. We run it through the grinder. I go ahead and I put it in my pot with some water and some salt, and that's to pull any impurities out and help it from burning when you start heating it up. And then you just put it on really low heat and you just let it melt. Extras over here in the big pan that I just put on top of the wood stove. Some of you may be curious about the salt. The trick that I've learned is that if you use a good handful of salt, about 2 or 3 cups or even more of water, and that's going to really wash your fat so that all of those impurities and nastiness are going to go out. The salt is going to absorb into the water, so it's not going to salt your fat. It'll just draw the impurities down into the water so that when you pour everything out to let it solidify, you'll get a nice clean cake on the top and a brine on the bottom. So it's been about 3.5, 4 hours since I put the fat onto the heat. We're going to go ahead and strain it off now, and then I will put those pieces back in the pot to cook for a little bit on their own and see if I can't get any more fat out of it. For the straining, what I'm doing is I have my big metal bowl and I have a fine mesh sieve, and then I'm also going to do some cheesecloth over top. Now this is a fairly large pot of fat, so I'm not going to pour it. I'm going to use a smaller pot and kind of scoop it for the first little bit. It's actually looking really clear already, which is very nice. So you can see I'm starting to get some of these fat pieces in here. And see, I got this full bowl nicely strained out. I'm going to let this drip dry for a little bit. I still have more in the pan, so I'm going to use the other bowl that I have over here. And then we will put these somewhere cold and let them set up for the night. So any water that might still be in here will sink to the bottom while the fat hardens on the top. So we are on day 2, and the tallow has set up, and I will go ahead and show you what we do with that next step. But first I'm going to interrupt because I got a box today. So back in October, I went to Homesteaders of America conference with the mod team from Roots and Refuge. But while we were there, we ran into this wonderful gentleman named Josh, who has a company called Liberty Lumberworks. They do have a website, and I have the link for that down in the show notes below. Most of his stuff is shown on his Instagram page, which I will also link down below. He custom made me a cutting board, so we're gonna go ahead and pull it. Now I've already opened the box because I didn't want to have to like cut through a bunch of stuff on camera. But guys, look at this beautiful, beautiful beast. Oh my God. I'm just gonna look. This is the back of the board. He's got his brand on there. It's got feet for no slip, but check this out. It's got the juice lip for when you're cutting, because I will use this as an actual cutting board. It's got this beautiful logo that we designed that's burned in. Oh my gosh. So again, Josh from Liberty Lumberworks. Even if you don't use it as a cutting board, could you just imagine serving a charcuterie board on something like this? I can guarantee you guys are gonna see a lot more of this board in my videos. I can't say thank you enough, Josh. This is a beautiful piece of art, and I am so happy that it's mine and so proud to promote your business, and I hope you guys go check him out. Now that we're done admiring my new pretty, let's get back to finishing our lard. The first thing that I do after the first render of my lard is I take all of those cracklings, those bits and pieces of skin and meat that were left in there. I could go ahead and put them back in and cook them a little crispier for our personal use, but in truth, I'm not a big fan, and we have chickens. So this time of year, anything that's high protein and fat content is really, really good for the chickens. So all these little bits and pieces that are left over, that I'm going to add equal parts of my chicken feed, which has got their protein stuff, and I'm just gonna add that in and stir it all around. And that's a really nice little treat for them. Lots of protein, lots of fat, help keep them healthy and warm through the winter months. So the first thing to remember when working with pig lard versus cow tallow or sheep lanolin is that it's not going to be quite as hard, especially if you're working in a warm house like I am. So make sure that you have everything that you're going to need for this next step ready and within reach and already separated, because the last thing you want to do is have to change a bunch of gloves or grab things with greasy hands, because you're going to get greasy. So I've got parchment paper, I've got my spatula in case I can't get it out with just my hands, and I've got my paper towels already torn off, ready to go. These are for blotting any of the liquids off of the fat. I've got my bowl of lard, and as you can see, it's soft. It's got some give to it. We're just gonna try and pop this thing out, which I don't think we're gonna be able to because it's pretty soft. You just need to take this out of the bowl. It's not gonna come out in a solid piece unless it spent a good chunk of time in the freezer. Gloves are recommended because you are gonna get your hands in this. Ugh. So here you can see the little bit of water that came off this, they call this broth, that came out of that as it solidified, but most of what was in this bowl was lard. You can go ahead and package this up right now just as it is and use it. It'll be just fine. But I want to render it again and get more of that water and impurities out. That's some beautiful stuff right there. So I'm going to break this up into a few smaller pieces and put it back in our pot and go from there. That lard cake was a little bit softer than I should have been working with, so I wasn't able to show you the blotting. Really recommended that you make sure it's nice and chilled and a little easier to work with and not melting on those corners like that. So what we're gonna do now is we got it in the pot. I'm gonna get this cleaned and ready to put our lard back into once it's melted, and I'll show you the next step. I've got all of my lard back in my pot, and it's on my wood stove because we've got some cold temperatures coming in, so the wood stove's nice and warm. And you're gonna add more water back in there. I usually do about half a cup for every pound of fat. This is going to help wash the fat and get any extra impurities back out, as well as keep it from burning as you do that. Because it's already a nice pretty white and there's no funky smell to it, I'm not going to add salt this round because I don't think I need it. So we're just going to add the water, get this heated back up, melted, and get it back in the freezers to solidify overnight, and we'll pull it apart tomorrow and see what it looks like. Okay, here we are on day 3. Now, the first thing that you're going to think to yourself is, at this point in time, I don't have time to do this. This is taking so long. Why is this so complicated? You don't have to do the lard rendering this many times. You can just put it in without adding too much water and salt at the beginning and just render it once and skim it off and be done. However, personally, I like making sure that my lard is nice and clean, so I go through this process, and I wanted to teach you this process. Anything worth doing is worth doing right, and anything good usually takes time. So anyway, we're on our last steps. I'm just going to take it out of the bowls, separate the water from it, put it back into the pot to melt down again, and we will pour it into our storage containers. And that's it. Look at how beautiful that is. I'm just gonna slice through it, make it easier to get out. Just pop, look at that. And from the looks of it, there's not very many impurities left at all. So I'm gonna pop that back in the pan. Get these other ones out, look at that. Now that is some beautiful, clean pig fat. See how that water is that yellowy color? That's the last bit of impurities and nastiness that was in the fat, and we are good to go. So this batch here is going to go back into the pot with nothing but just a tiny little splash of water to keep the bottom from burning. which will cook off as it heats up. We're going to melt it back down to a liquid state. There's no more impurities in here. I've got the lard all melted. It's on the stove here, just going to get in the last little bit of water that you see those little bubbles there. Just the last little bit that was frozen onto it. And then I'll pour it out into the jars and it'll be good to go. Now you can store this in mason jars, in a food safe bucket, any type of container that has a good sealable lid. Make sure if you're going to put your lard in a jar that you use a wide mouth, otherwise it's going to be really hard to get out. You want to make sure that wherever you're storing it, it's going to be someplace cold, if not frozen. This is still pig fat. It will go rancid after time. You can't just keep it on the shelf or in your cupboard. Once you start baking with this instead of Crisco or vegetable oil, putting this in your cooking, it is to die for. It's going to change your life. I am actually going to do some research and use it in some of my soaps. I've so far only used olive oil and coconut oil in my soaps. For me, switching over to a fat source with my soaps that is self-sustainable is a big, big step. This is just one more process from having our pigs. If you've been following along, you remember now, out of our pigs, we've gotten garden tilled, fertilizer, and then we've gotten dog treats with the skins. We've gotten bacon and a whole bunch of meat that we can consume for our own self. And now we have lard, which we can use for baking, for greasing, and for making soap. Pig is not just pork. There's so many things that come out of it. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you're going to give this a try the next time. And if you don't raise your own pigs, but you still want to try making lard or tallow, go to your local butcher and ask them, hey, can I buy some pig fat or can I buy some cow fat? 9 times out of 10, they'll actually give it to you for free. Give it a try. Let me know in the comments down below if you did give it a try. If you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up and comment down below. It helps the YouTube algorithm keep us out there and in the public eye. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe and follow along with our adventures. We're getting real close to garden season and seed starting is just around the corner. So remember guys, get your hands dirty.